Asher, We'll do this chant 2 more times, and just reminding you, I can see your faces, and it's really helpful to me when I see you chanting along. Hey, Asher Ehyeh, Ehyeh, Asher Ehyeh, Ehyeh, Asher Ehyeh, Ehyeh, Asher Ehyeh. Hey, Asher, hey, hey, Asher, hey, hey, Asher, hey, hey, Asher. Hey, well, I could just sing that all night. That chant is by the musicians of the Nava Tehillah community in Jerusalem. And if you want to see a video of two of them performing it and some really beautiful harmony, I'm putting a link to it in the chat. Or you could just Google Ehyeh, Asher Ehyeh chant Nava Tehillah, and you would also find it. And all right, friends. Well, happy solstice, happy Hanukkah, happy almost new moon. And I'm finding myself, even though I'm a little sad that because of our missed classes earlier in the season, we've now sort of pushed into the season of feeling of people not being able to do these late nights and diminished numbers. I'm also feeling really delighted at this confluence of our final class in which we're focusing on becoming and the manifestations of the divine and the mysteries of the natural world in this moment of solstice, approaching new moon, when so much is becoming, when there is so much evidence of how everything is always in flux and always becoming, and we're at that turning of the year, which is so full of mystery and beauty and uncertainty. And it's a great time to be thinking about becoming and the unfinished, uncertain, out of our sense of control and out of our sense of stability, ways in which the divine manifests. So I invite you, as our first reflection of the evening, to actually just think about that for a moment. What evidence do you see in your own life? Do you experience in your own life of God's constant becomingness? All right, that question in the chat as well. Oops, I thought I could read that question. What evidence of God's constant becomingness do we experience in our lives? I'm really enjoying some of the things that are coming in the chat, mentioning the cycles of the year, the cycles of life, the way generations pass and new generations come, the way ideas pass and new ideas, new cultural norms arise. New music. I have a colleague, Rabbi Alon Ferenczi, who coaches artists, and he talks about, he sees the evidence of God in our human capacity to create art. That's the basis of his spirituality. And changing forms of matter. So tonight is our last night. We have very little time, so as I believe the Zen proverb says, we must move very slowly. We're going to focus on reading a few excerpts as I sent them out earlier. One really lovely person emailed me and asked me to just lecture and not do the journaling and not do the discussion for an hour. And I said, I can't really do that. I won't sound that good if I'm not responding to the ideas that you all bring. So we'll see how this goes. For our first reading tonight, we'll be referencing that phrase we just chanted, Ehya Asher Ehya, which in the 10 Commandments got translated as I am that I am, right, but really is in the future tense. I will be as I will be. Don't try. Moshe asks, who are you? And Hashem's response is, don't try to define me. You will just keep finding out. So we're going to turn to page 219 for a bit of a longer reading, followed by a bit of a shorter reading. So I need a volunteer who's comfortable with a bit of a longer reading to start on page 219 after the two quotes. At the beginning of the last paragraph on the page, the phrase offered to Moshe as the divine name. And then you're going to read to the end of this section at the top of page 221. God is infinite potential. God is change. So it's about a page and a half of reading. And I have a volunteer.
I volunteer.
Thank you, Leah.
I guess that's why I'm unmuted. I didn't realize I was.
There you go.
Okay. And I haven't volunteered yet, so last night I better. Okay. So starting from the phrase, correct? Yeah. The phrase offered to Moses as the divine name, Eya Asher Eya, can most literally be translated as I will be that I will be, or I am becoming that I am becoming. The word Eya is the first person future tense of the verb to be. It is the shortened name, Eya, that Moses is instructed to use to let the Israelites know who or what has sent him to them. It is as if Moses is to say to his enslaved kin, there is a power in the universe whose name is becoming. What is now is not what will be in the future. This power of transformation will free you from slavery because it makes possible the most audacious change. This was the message that God was trying to give Moses in response to his first question, who am I to go to Pharaoh? There he received the answer, Ehyeh will be with you. When Moses first encounters the divine, he is entirely unprepared for the call to liberate the Israelites. He lacks confidence and worries that he doesn't have all the answers. God tells him that that's okay. Ehyeh will be with him and he will become what he needs to become. In this encounter, Moses is introduced to God not as a supernatural being, but as the process of becoming. Ehyeh is the biblical name for Whitehead's source of novelty. In the words of process, theologian Charles Hartshorne, God represents a maximum of potentiality of unactualized power to be. Ehyeh is that which makes transformation not just possible, but necessary. If God is the ultimate potentiality of all potentialities, then change is godly. Perfection does not lie in achieving some final state of completeness. In fact, such a state is impossible. Change, development, evolution are not just natural aspects of material reality, they are its most godly aspects. In the words of visionary science fiction writer Octavia Butler, God is infinite potential, God is change.
Thank you for reading that so beautifully, Leah. Just take a moment to breathe that in. And now we're going to skip a couple pages to I think, a very key implication of this theology. Page 225, again, we're starting at the bottom paragraph. This is a smaller reading. Too often people misconstrue faith. And we're just going to the next page in ways that we cannot predict, right? We won't continue to the COVID-19 pandemic paragraph. So can I have another volunteer who is willing to read that relatively short 2-paragraph excerpt, starting at the bottom of 225?
I will.
Shevach, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead,
Thank
Shabbat.
you. Oh, Shevach, go ahead.
Too often, people misconstrue faith with certainty, assuming that to have faith means to be confident in the outcome, to know exactly where things are going to end up. But as life has a way of teaching us, we rarely know where we're going to end up or how we're going to get there. Martin Luther King Jr. is reported to have once said, "Faith is the first step, even when you don't see the whole stairway." To take that first step, we have to trust the process, while relinquishing our need to control where it might ultimately take us. As the Buddhist teacher Sharon Salzberg notes, any insistence that people or circumstances meet our exact expectations is not faith, but another effort at control bound to end in disappointment. If we embrace God as change, as becoming, then we have to be willing to relinquish our need to be in control. Things as they are now in our own lives, in the world around us, are often not what we expected. Things as they are now will inevitably change in ways that we cannot predict.
Thanks for reading, Shevach. It didn't occur to me when I read through this the first 2 times, but of course I'm attracted to it. It's very related to a song I composed that some of you heard at my concert this summer. I don't see the end of the road, but I will take a step. I don't see the end of the road, but I will take another step. So let's open another Word doc on our computer, or find a writing utensil and something to write on, and take a little time for journaling. What happens to our spirituality if we really commit to this idea that God is just too dynamic, too full of potential and change to be static? What happens to our sense of possibility for ourselves as well? Or I'm putting that question in the chat as well. Take a couple minutes to just think about that for ourselves. All right, let's take a few minutes for some sharing of the insights that have come to us. Welcome to either share in the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand and unmute and share a very brief thought, you're welcome to do so out loud as well. I'll get started. What this does for me is move me away from a focus on endpoints, on the happy ending that I want to achieve, the happily ever after. Whether that looks like coming to a particular sort of equilibrium in my personal life, or a goal for this community, or, if I can just resolve this one conflict, then life will be perfect, and puts me into the mentality of process. The point of living a good life, a happy life, being how I meet these challenges instead of how I get beyond, instead of focusing on getting beyond them. I see some people writing in the chat, if God has changed, then I can change too. It allows me to take more risks and have faith, endless possibilities. Gives a new meaning to Shabbat. I like that. Gail, go ahead.
Well, sometimes I think that the only constant in the world is change. The only thing that's the only constant, everything changes. Our bodies, our children, our families, our relationships, our community, the world we live in, nothing stays the same. Everything's in flux. Maybe we don't always see it from all of the change from one day to the next, but everything is always changing. And unlike the author who never took physics class, I took two, one in high school, one in college, and I still don't understand any of it. The only one I can understand is the lightning. You can see the electricity in lightning. You can see it if your hair stands up from static electricity. But I, for the life of me, can't understand how I can plug something in and it works and I get light, or I get a computer. I don't understand any of that. It's just like, it's out there. Just like God is out there, and I don't have to understand all of it to utilize it. I've always felt that way. I utilize electricity every day in my life, but I do not comprehend it. And no matter how many physics classes I take, I will not be able to comprehend how it works, how these electrons and charges work.
I love how you're bridging this chapter and the next, Gail.
Oh, that's the next chapter.
No, that's okay. I was saying I love it. It also points out, if everything changes, then we don't have to understand every step of it, right? Like we can be in it. We can experience it without needing to be able to define, categorize, understand each thing. Beautiful. Okay. And rereading this piece also made me think about, some of you have heard me mention many times Rebecca Solnit's book, Hope in the Dark, which is a really, I think, beautiful meditation on not knowing the end of a story, not knowing the end of our own story, not knowing the end of the stories of the struggles of the human condition. I just put a link to the publisher's blurb about it in the chat for those who are interested. Again, it's Hope in the Dark by Rebecca Solnit. So, okay. Dale took us on this segue to electricity and all we don't understand about it. So let's go there as well. And we're going to read an excerpt from Rabbi Spitzer's chapter on the material world, beginning on page 250. The question remains. And going to page 251, the very bottom of the page, some things that we humans should just not touch. I have another volunteer to read. I'm starting at the question remains. Go ahead, Enid.
The question remains, why did the authors of the Bible perceive godly power as so inherently dangerous? What truth were they trying to convey in these metaphors of fire and electricity and the stories of zapping that happens to people both innocent and guilty? My answer is that the biblical authors are acknowledging a simple reality. To be alive is pretty damn scary. We exist in a universe that is largely, even today, beyond our understanding. We are often at the mercy of forces we cannot control. The ancients were very honest about God and the Bible, and is not a Hallmark greeting card. It's a holy, sometimes contradictory muddle of beauty and horror, love and pain, hope and hopelessness, a lot like life. And somewhere within and behind all of its complexities is Hashem, the source of life itself. As the prophet Isaiah audaciously declared, forming light and creating darkness, making peace and creating destruction, I, Hashem, do all these things. There is only one power source of the universe, the prophet teaches. It manifests in that which we find pleasure and in that which scares us. It both sustains us and makes us mortal. And just as with electrical current, if we don't properly channel that divine power, we can guarantee that some severe shocks. As the world witnessed in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, when human beings start playing with the primal energies of the universe, we take on godlike powers of both creation and destruction. Perhaps the Bible is right in warning us that there are some things that we humans should just not touch.
Thanks for reading this, Enid. So, we've touched in classes already on this issue of God's not always nice or easy. And I think this is the most, Rabbi Spitzer sort of most intensely explicit dealing with this. It is lovely to have a theology that God is love, God is kindness, and that the absence of those things are just, distance from God. And Rabbi Spitzer is pointing out that, in fact, throughout Torah, there is an insistence that God is the source of the terrifying as well. The terrifying, even the capricious. The person who reaches out, I don't know if you all read this chapter, but she references a story from the prophets about a person who reaches his hand out to steady the Ark of the Covenant so that it doesn't fall on its journey, but you can't touch the Ark of the Covenant. And so he gets zapped and he dies. And the thing about this theology is that it is is drastic and graphic in its vision of the consequences of coming up against divine power in the wrong way. It's also impersonal, right? Like there's no claim that the guy who reached out to study the ark did something bad. He didn't do something morally wrong. He just did something dangerous. And not everything that is dangerous is morally wrong. So I guess given all that, I invite you to do some journaling and musing about the helpful potential, the limitations of this divine metaphor. So I'm putting a variation on that question in the chat. Probably couldn't re-articulate it. I'll let you do some journaling. Okay, let's open it up for a little bit of sharing about our musings. Or in the chat or out loud. Go ahead, Emily.
So I felt that if we use this metaphor as God as electricity, then the positive thing is feeling that we can tap into that power. And that's really good. But then, as along with what Philip's saying about prayers of petition can be dicey, the image of God is watching over us, God is guiding us, even God as co-creator kind of fall apart a little bit. So that makes me wonder, and I think I already do this, is I have a few different images, a few different metaphors working for me. And I don't know if this is kosher, but it's what I do.
No, I think it's necessary. I mean, as Rabbi Spitzer points out at the beginning of the book, it's really like there's not really any one metaphor that can do all the work, so to speak, that we need God to do for us, right? Like that we need the God idea to do for us. And both you and Philip are right. Like this metaphor of the raw power, the electricity, the stuff, I think of this as the Psalm 29 metaphor. That's a psalm that we, if you can't place it, that we recite every Friday night at Shabbat services. That's just like God in the thunder, God in the lightning, the voice of God over the waters. We studied it in one of our early classes. These metaphors are not going to provide like a personal God who cares about you and is responsive to what you need. And sometimes it's actually really helpful to depersonalize the divine, to like not take what happens to us or what we see in the world so personally. And sometimes we actually really need a personal God. That's a really important point. Does anyone want to try to answer the question that just got posed in the chat? I have a hypothesis of the answer. Oh, go ahead, Alex, which, by the way, nice to have you. Nice that you chose to be with us on the solstice.
Well, I didn't choose it that face-to-face was canceled. So I got to be here. I got to have that in my part and got to be here. So I got stuck at the beginning of the whole beginning of becoming, where, all right, source of genuine novelty, when she quotes Whitehead. The capacity.
I'm sorry, I just want to pause. Wait, Alex, are you answering the question Enid asked?
A little bit, because I got
okay, great.
That there's nothing new under the sun, and that it's constant, that God is constantly recreating. And I got stuck because I think that it may be a closed system. And I think of it like a balloon, partly blown up, you squeeze it here, it comes out that way, and it comes out that way. So the electricity thing is we're constantly being empowered, but it's the same. I really see it as a closed system. God is part of the system. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's all where I got to.
Is that a problem for you?
No,
It sounds like it's a problem. Oh, okay.
no, it's just how I see it.
Mhm.
Sorry if it was obscure.
No, I think it's, yeah. God is in it with us. I don't have personally a very comforting answer. I think one thing this metaphor does for me is that it reminds me that the point of a spiritual life is not necessarily to feel safe. To feel some reverence, to feel some humility. That's certainly what this metaphor does for me, but it does not make me feel safe. And I think particularly I talked about this in previous classes. Safety as a value is so prominent nowadays, and I don't think it always has been. I mean, I think we've always wanted to not take foolhardy risks or unnecessary risks. I'm sorry, I'm floundering. I'm not sure where I'm quite going with this.
Safety, is that what you were saying?
Safety. I've read a lot of parenting books on safetyism and resisting the culture of safetyism and allowing our children to literally to be endangered, the value of allowing our children to make dangerous choices, the necessity. And that faith, right? Like there's the snake handler version of faith. There's the testing God. I remember talking to a Christian colleague at the beginning of the pandemic and saying, this stuff about like, I'm going to be unmasked and God is going to protect me. That's not piety. That's demanding something of God. That's testing God. And that's not real faith. Faith isn't things are going to work out the way I want to because I say so and because God loves me and I'm not going to get hurt and I can do anything dangerous. But faith is the world is full of dangers and I might get hurt. And in some bigger, wholer way, there's some sense in which I'll be okay then too.
I think when I said what I did, it was just in response of what are the limitations of this metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
And, not necessarily that that's what we're looking for, safety, but it does question safety. And I'm thinking that this guy that, went to save the ark and got zapped, if he had this opportunity to do it again, he probably would choose to do that because that was important. And it was really to risk his safety, whether he knew it or not, to protect something that he thought was, sacred.
Mm-hmm. Right. I guess in my response to you, though, you framed it as a limitation of the metaphor, but I actually think it might also be a strength of the metaphor, is that it reminds us that life is not safe.
Yeah.
I mean, like both and both. Sometimes we want to feel safe, but it's not like, and like spiritually, we're not going to be able to, right? Like spiritually, as in all things, right? We need to be out of our comfort zone, but not in a danger zone to learn and to grow, right? There's the the comfort zone, there's the, I forget what it's called, the growing edge zone, and then there's the danger zone. And the best learning, the best growth happens when we are in the intermediate zone. The learning zone. Thank you, educator. There you go. All right. Here's one. There were two more excerpts I was going to say we needed to read. We don't, but I do want to do one more because it's just so neat to close this with our theme for the year. So in her final chapter, Rabbi Spitzer focuses on two very specific metaphors, the first of which is electricity, which we've been discussing. The second of which is GPS, global positioning system. And she makes an analogy to a different GPS, godly positioning system. And this idea of like a metaphor of something that helps us stay centered, stay oriented to who we are and where we are. So we're going to read a last paragraph about that on page 260. But first, I want to just really appreciate the comment that just came in the chat that references, like many of us had our grandparents live through pogroms. To be Jewish is to actively choose an identity that is less safe than we would be if we chose a different identity. And in America in the 21st century, certainly until about 5 years ago, we could ignore that. We could not see it or think about it very often. But you know, it's like the character who studies the ark. Some things are more important to us than safety. Uzzah. Say his name.
Like putting
Uzzah, who studies the ark.
like putting the
Go ahead, Gail.
like putting the menorah in the window, and you don't know what kind of kooks are out there that see that you are Jewish. But I put it in the window anyway. Not the candle one is in the house, but the electric one is. But yeah, that's what it.
Or my husband and I walk around this city wearing kippot because some things are more important to us than safety. So, okay. So page 260, one of our most basic spiritual tasks. To the end of the paragraph and the end of the page, who wants to be our last reader for the course? Somebody who hasn't already read before, perhaps? Oh, well, someone who has read before was our only volunteer, and I wouldn't want to deny you the pleasure, so Julie, go ahead.
One of our most basic spiritual tasks is to foster an awareness of who we really are, a sense of our location vis-a-vis everyone around us. It's a process of saying, Hineni, I am here, both to ourselves and to others. This is me. It can be challenging to locate ourselves outside of the assumptions, expectations, and negative messages that the world hands us. The godly positioning system is that which teaches us to trust our own sense of ourselves. We can experience this divine GPS internally in our innate sense of who we are. We can also experience it externally in the wholesome messages we receive from the people around us, the loving voices that affirm our humanity and our unique gifts. And of course, our location is not static. As we discover new facets of who we are and who we want to be, we can continue to ask ourselves that godly question, where am I?
Thank you, Julie. And I love the idea of our final reading from this book, bringing us to Hineni, our theme for the year, being able to say, here I am. I'm here for this. She does go on to talk about the ways we locate ourselves, and I think she has some really beautiful points. about like using the map that is Jewish tradition, Jewish rituals, as well as the minyan, the idea of how we gather together as accountability partners. She has a great line like, you might think that it doesn't matter whether you're alone or in a group when you're sitting in silent meditation, but in my experience, it's a whole lot harder to just give up and get off the cushion when you're surrounded by other people. So this GPS that helps us know ourselves uses these tools, our own innate ability to ground our rituals and spiritual teachings and the community. And I think that as a Kavanah, it makes a lot of sense to me that this was her final chapter. Is a really beautiful way to close. If you've finished the book and you're still looking for Hashem, she's implying subtly, go and find a community of practice to help you continue on that journey. The last question, though, I want us to consider with the little time we have left, we have explored in the last many weeks the metaphors in the book, which are the metaphors of water, place, voice, rock, cloud, fire, becoming, and material phenomena, specifically electricity. Where else is God? What are the other metaphors that help you answer the question, where are you? And get to Hineni. All right. With respect for the external processors who can already say an answer, let's give it another minute or two for people to chew on the question. Okay, I see that people are already really wanting to share their answers, so let's go for it. I see some wonderful things coming in the chat, and Philip also wanted to share something out loud, so go ahead, Philip.
The nice long list reminds me of something that I like to think of, that there is sacredness, there is divinity everywhere, everywhere. Fire, rock, water, place, everywhere. And in terms of where I am, I would want to say Hineni Ger Tashav.
Mm. You know who you are. I see a lot of the internal and the in-between. Whether, we find God in community, in the gathering together, and in the, I would posit, as an extension of what many of you are writing, that it's not just in the community in a given moment of how we gather together, but also in the community spanning time. Sometimes when I can't believe the words of the prayers that we're saying, and sometimes I can't believe the words of the prayers we're saying, but I believe in the power of the words because I believe in the divinity accruing between me and all of the generations that have come before me saying these same words. So I love that Barry has written in the chat a quote from Mordechai Kaplan. Many people are saying that Rabbi Spitzer's book is the new Reconstructionist theology. And I think it is. It's a really beautiful articulation of a Reconstructionist theology And I love that you're reminding us that Kaplan, it was trying to articulate a theology. People often say that Mordechai Kaplan just didn't believe in God. But he did believe in the divine. He believed in the power that makes for salvation throughout the universe. And as Barry has just shared in the chat, the reality that elicits from us the best that is in us and enables us to bear the worst that can befall us. So may we be blessed, my friends, to continue becoming, to continue being able to locate ourselves, to, as Emily so organically shared with us tonight, remember that we can use the metaphors we need, and it doesn't make us inconsistent, it doesn't make us wrong, that we are allowed to have all of these ways of relating to the divine, because the divine is always becoming and is not and has never been interested in being only one thing to us or for us or with us. So I'll close us out and thank you all for sticking with this beautiful divine exploration over the past 2.5 months. We'll sing Ehya, Asher Ehya again. I'll officially close, and then as before, anyone who wants to stay and chat for a few more minutes is welcome. And I should just make one more plug. This Friday night, we're reinstating Jam Band Shabbat for the first time in 3 years. And you're all invited if you feel well and confident to make it. And I will be sprinkling this metaphoric exploration that we've been doing throughout the intention setting that I'll be doing throughout the service. But wherever you go in peace, and may this time that we've spent together serve you well. Asher,